Terry, may God add his blessing to the reading of the scripture this morning, and may the words from my mouth be what we need to hear. This church family celebrates our children. We try to get our kids involved in every aspect of the church functions. Recently, we've really put a lot of emphasis on getting the kids involved in morning worship. We celebrate our kids. What would life be around here without the kids making a little bit of noise and bringing a little life to the place? The parents of one rowdy little boy were trying to decide what to get him for his birthday, and his dad suggested maybe they should get him a bike. And Mom said, "That's a pretty good idea. Do you think that'll improve his behavior?" And Dad said, "I doubt it, but at least it'll spread it around over a wider area." Yeah, children can be difficult at times, but they are also a pleasure to have around. They look at life in such a different way than us adults do, don't they? A grandmother took her grandson to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. She showed him all the different parts of the beautiful building. And finally, they came to the altar. And Grandma said, "You know, under this altar is where all the cardinals are buried." And he looked in amazement, looked up at her and said, "You mean the whole team?" Years ago, there was a movie that was made. It was called The Night of the Hunter. It was about two children who were running from their very abusive, very violent stepfather. He was a guy who ordained himself as a preacher, and he had love tattooed on one finger and hate tattooed on another. Very mean person. And so the kids ran away. And down the river they went on a raft, and they got to a place where they came to a home of an old woman who had taken in some orphans. And she took them in, and she said that she called herself a tree with many branches. And so she took these children in, and the stepfather came, and eventually the movie plays out, and she wins, the lady wins, and has the children, and the stepfather is no longer going to be in the picture. Well, she said during that movie, "My soul is humble when I see the way little ones accept their lot." She's saying this as they're gathering around the Christmas tree at Christmas time. And she says, "Lord, save little children. The winds blow and the rains are cold, yet they still abide. Lord, save the children." That's a prayer that we could pray today. It's a dangerous world out there. It's a dangerous world for our children. Every year, over 3.5 million children are physically abused in this country. Every day, 5 children die from child abuse. Most of those kids are under 3 years old. They're kicked, they're punched, they're beaten. Other terrible things happen to them. I could tell you more, but I wouldn't get through too many more sentences talking about it. I'd be weeping. UNESCO estimates that there are about 40 million street kids around the world. 40 million kids who are homeless and in the street around this world. That's about the combined population of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, all put together. These kids live in doorways, they live under bridges, they live in junk cars, wherever they can find a little shelter from the weather. And not all hurts are physical. Every year, 2 million kids in this country have their parents divorced, and that hurts too. It's a tough world out there for kids. It's a hard truth that we just have to face. After our commitment to God, our number one responsibility is to the children. This is a principle we need to understand. Jesus raised children up to a very high level of importance when he said these words. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. Our number one responsibility is first of all to God and then to our children, more than our responsibility to our parents. In the movie, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? It's an old movie. Anybody seen that one? Yeah. Okay. In that movie, there's a great conversation between Dr. Prentice, who is the character played by Sidney Poitier, and Dr. Prentice's father. His father is trying to tell him that he needs to see things his way, and he resorts to reminding his son that he owes him. He says that he carried a mail bag 75,000 miles, and he mowed yards in the dark to earn money to support him. He reminds him that he and his wife gave up lots of things so that he could have everything that he needed and so that he could get a good education. And Dr. Prentice answers like this: you tell me what I owe you for what you've done for me. Let me tell you something. I owe you nothing. If you carried that bag 1,000,000 miles, you did what you were supposed to do because you brought me into this world, and from that day, you owed me everything you could do for me, like I will owe my son if I ever have another. We may not like that tone. Wasn't a very nice way of putting it, but you know Dr. Prentice is right. The Apostle Paul put it like this: for children are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. There's a beautiful story about a young man named David who left home for the first time. From the age of 7, he had lived with his uncle and aunt who sold fruit at a fruit stand, a peddler's stand. They had loved and cared for David all of his life. And as an adult, he stood on the train platform getting ready to leave for college. He grabbed the calloused hands of his uncle and he said, "How can I ever begin to repay you for what you've done for me?" His uncle said, "David, there's a saying, the love of parents goes to their children, but the love of the children goes to their children." David protested. He said, "That's not so. I'll always be trying to." And then the aunt interrupted, and she said, "David, what your Uncle Asher means is that a parent's love is not to be paid back. It can only be passed on." Our first responsibility is to our children. This doesn't mean we don't have responsibility to our parents. We do. But our children come first. A mother comes to her pastor with a familiar problem. "Dad needs someone to look after him," she says. "He has become very difficult to deal with. If I bring him into our home, the effect on my children and on my marriage is going to be devastating, I think. What should I do?" The pastor's answer was, your first responsibility is to your kids, then to your parents. Whenever we forget that rule, there are problems. Well, what are our responsibilities to our kids? May I suggest that there are two. First of all, it is our responsibility to provide our children with a safe world. That's pretty basic, right? They deserve a safe, secure world. They deserve a world that's going to go on. Unfortunately, we're not doing so well as a human race, I'll say, with this responsibility. We know that the rainforests are disappearing at a very alarming rate. We're losing about an area the size of the state of Pennsylvania every year. The loss of the rainforest is going to mean an increase of carbon dioxide, and this is going to help cause temperatures to rise. The year 2023 was the warmest year since global records began in 1850, more than the previous year of 2016. The 10 warmest years in the 174-year record have all occurred during the last 10 years, this last decade. We have a responsibility. The polar ice caps are melting. We don't know what the future holds, but we're talking about things that could be very devastating in our children's lifetimes. So we better be serious about finding some answers. Some time ago in a village in south of France, several people were killed when a bridge collapsed near the village. A man had been dredging and selling sand. He was digging up sand and selling it, and it happened that it was under the bridge. And so he removed too much sand near the pillars, and so the pillars gave way and the bridge fell down. This was a contributing factor to the bridge falling. Well, one of the people that was killed on that bridge when it collapsed was a motorcyclist. He was the son of the guy who was doing the dredging. Is this a parable for us, maybe? Have we spoiled the planet with our greed to the point that our kids will be victims, even though unintended? I don't have the answers, but it's an issue that we, as a society, and as all people of the world, must address. There's a Kenyan proverb that I just learned of this week, and I absolutely love it. I think it's perfect. Here's how it goes. Treat the earth well. It was not given to you by your parents. It was loaned to you by your kids. They're going to need it back. And then it's going to be their responsibility. A safe and secure world. Lord, save the children. We owe them that. We also owe them a safe and secure home. They need to know that their adults are committed to them. They need to know that someone will always be there for them. They need to know that they are recognized and they are important and that each of them are special in their own way. They need to hear that they are the most important thing in their adults' lives. If we don't do these things, if it means that we delay or we even forget some of our own dreams, if it means that we make some extra sacrifices, if it means that we sometimes grin and bear it, so be it. The kids' welfare comes first. We can't keep them from making mistakes, we know that. We can't keep them from making wrong decisions. All we can do is give them the proper environment and teach them right from wrong. And then the rest is up to them. Someone compared it to what often happens in a small town airport. As a plane takes off at night. As the plane heads its nose down the runway, from the tower comes a small beam of light to guide that plane down the runway. And then, as it makes its way along the runway, it begins to rise gracefully from the ground, and then that light is turned off. The attendant, he or she has done all that they can do. They've helped the pilot off to a good start. And this is about all that parents can do for their kiddos. Get them off to a good start, and then trust God to give them a safe landing at the other end. Lord, save the children. It's a dangerous world out there, but we're not without hope. We can make it safer. That's our responsibility in this life, to provide every child with a safe world and a safe, secure home. Jesus said, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. Thank God for children. We're so happy, we're so blessed to have as many kids as we have in this church family. May we always do right by them. Amen.